All right, I think we're here now. So, hi, I'm Mike London, and I'm visiting with artists who are working here in Montgomery County. Uh, Culture Work supports so many artists and arts organizations, and these interviews are a chance for us to get to know a few of them. And so, right now, I'm talking to Morris Howard. And so, Morris, welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
Um, I I know your work, but I don't want to define it. I want you to tell me about yourself as an artist first. When did you start?
Well, Mike, I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
I actually don't remember. I think it was around 4 or 5 that I started drawing, and my brother, who's 2 years and 10 months younger than me,
Yeah.
was my first model. So and I started drawing him on paper bags, and so that's how I got started. And so I've been going ever since, in one form or another. So
You
it's
know, it's interesting. You say when you first started, you were drawing him, right?
yes,
So you started with people.
yes.
Your work, I'm curious to know from you who really influenced your work, because when I look at your work, and I love your work, but when I look at your work,
Thank you.
I'm reminded of another artist, and I'm not talking stylistically, it's the same, but you have the same ability to capture expressions and your use of light, and it's Sargent. So to somebody else it might seem odd for me to make that comparison, but I remember some of those paintings that I used to love of his when I would be at the National Gallery. And
Yes,
when I first saw there was a painting you did, I can't remember what it's called, but it reminds me of like a lady in waiting on sitting at the chair.
yes.
And I as soon as I saw that, I thought, isn't that odd? It reminds me of Sargent, not
Wow, that's a
stylistically.
that's a that's a big compliment, Mike.
Well,
That, as a
I want to
matter of fact,
know
well,
who.
as a matter of fact, I had a mentor who passed away in 2000 and I want to say two. His name was Carl Owens, and he was actually the first person to introduce me to John Singer Sargent,
Really?
because John Singer Sargent was his idol, and uh, and so it's very interesting that you would make that comparison, because some people have compared me to Hopper, and um, maybe like not so much stylistically, but there's something about us that are similar. And as a matter of fact, the first artist that the first famous artist that I really admired was Norman Rockwell. And um, long time ago when I was a kid, I know that they used to have the art instruction schools, and there were I don't know if it was a whole show, but I remember seeing him on TV um, talking about art and things like that. So I remember that, and then later on, I discovered Charles White, who was an African American artist. I discovered him in through Ebony magazine, and he had his wanted posters um, that were being shown a lot during that time period. And we're talking like early 70s. And um, I started to admire him for his drawing skills. Um, and then later on, Budweiser had a series called the Kings of Africa. And it was a series of they went around the country and picked several African American artists to depict these kings, and it was a calendar, I believe, and also I believe some other things came out of it. And one of those artists was Carl Owens, who I mentioned earlier, who was an artist who lived in Detroit and was actually an illustrator during World War II. And so uh, it was an honor to finally meet him in Atlanta and he took me under his wing, and along with some other artists. But there are many artists that I admire.
I'm wondering, what was it, what was it you think that in that mentorship, what was it you learned from him?
Well, what I learned from Carl more than anything else, I mean, Carl was a fantastic artist, but what I learned from him when I first met him and I saw his library, just similar to the one that you have behind you, and it was filled with books on art, art psychology, art, I mean, you name it, he had it. And I was impressed with that because when I met Carl, he was probably in his late 60s.
Yeah.
And so when I met him, mid to late 60s, so when I met him, um, for him, I thought that was impressive for him to be where he was and for him to continue to study and continue to broaden his horizons when it came to art, and that gave me you know a lot of a lot of incentive. And so actually, I remember spreading these drawings out that I had on the floor. I mean, I was real raw, I mean, I was, I, my presentation wasn't the best. So and he allowed me to spread these drawings out on his floor. And we looked at them, and he encouraged me right from the start. I mean, and, I was really happy to get that endorsement from him. That he told me it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when,
Mm.
and I'll never forget that.
Yeah. What does it mean for you I'm curious, what does it mean for you to be a working artist in Dayton?
Well, Mike, I never thought that I would be here. I never thought that I would be back in Dayton. I left Dayton in '86,
Mhm.
and I left going to visit a friend in Arkansas, and I had no idea that I wasn't coming back for many years to live. I
Yeah.
came back for visits, but I didn't know that I didn't know that I wasn't coming back in the near future when I left. And I left, and I ended up going into the Navy, and I came back here, um, and my mother took ill in 2015. And so I was living in Georgia, and I came back here to I thought, she was having a routine, knee replacement, and we found out that she had other issues, and it was pretty much a downward slide from there, and she passed away in 2017. So I just things had started to happen here, and I feel very welcome here. I want to thank the arts community, like Culture Works and the Contemporary, Being Davis, um,
Yeah.
people that Jerry Stannard, people that thought that I had something to offer, and so I'm here.
Yeah. I I'm curious about when I look at your work. Um, One of the things I get a big kick out of, and I don't remember titles, I just remember pictures that I've seen. And when I really like your church ladies, and I cannot even tell you why, but there's just something so very real about that. I'm curious for you, do you have favorites?
I do. I have, and there's another painting that I did, and it was I think a painting right before that one, and it was called Time for Church. Or it was a
Yeah,
lady, she's standing on the sidewalk with her mink on, and
I
there's
love that.
her husband standing behind her with the cigarette. And that was one of my first, like, really, like, oil paintings that I really liked. I do have favorites. I'm not a person I'm not that type of artist that you know everything is the same to me. I have pieces that I really enjoy working on and that I really um, get a lot out of just because of what it's about to me. And as a matter of fact, those were those particular paintings were um, brought to life by references from a flea market, and they were little black and white photos that I found in Memphis at the time I was living there, and I found them as a shoebox full of all these anonymous uh, you know, black folks that I had no idea who they were, where they were most of the time, and um, it was very enjoyable um, to bring the colors and everything into life. It required a lot of research on my part because what I discovered, uh, you know, 40s and 50s and, you know, clothing and cars and things like that, some of the colors aren't like the colors that we have now. You know, with cars, if you noticed in the 40s, 50s, you see a lot of bright colors on cars that you just don't see today unless someone, you know, has their car painted a particular way, but you don't see them manufactured with some of the colors that they used back then.
Yeah, I remember I had a 52 Pontiac, and you know, with the visor and the whole nine yards, and that color of green I've never seen since.
Yes, 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 and those were the kind of things that I was, you know, surprised by, you know, pleasantly surprised, but it was, you know, about trying to do the research because authenticity is very important to me. And
So let me ask you, if you know, for somebody who's watching this, to any of the viewers who want to get to know your work, so where can they find your work if they say, oh, I want to go see what he's doing? How would they do that?
well, I just got an invite down to K-12, so who I actually do some teaching for. So I just got a text from Stephen Yates at K-12 about an exhibition in July through August.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
so there'll be an opportunity there. And right now, and that's assuming that things are
Right.
somewhat back to normal,
If we can
because
open up again.
right now I'm part of an exhibit that's at the Rife Gallery in Columbus at the
Okay.
state capitol, and because of COVID-19, it was, you know, there's no visitation right now. So and that will be coming down in early July.
Okay.
But after that, um, you know, we'll see. But it's more than likely I'll be in something around here. So there's um, it's kind of hard to say right now. I am at a gallery, but it's out of state, and it's in actually in North Little Rock, Arkansas.
Do you have a website?
I have I have a site where I have a web page, and I've had it for years, and it's at sachiart.com,
Okay.
and under Morris Howard.
Great.
And so, and I'm also on the gallery in North Little Rock is called Red Door,
Yes.
and I'm also on their website.
Great. Great. Yeah, because people are going to get curious and go, I want to see what he does.
Well, if you Google me, then all of those sites will come up. I mean, I've been on Art America for a long time, so
Good.
So I'm on a couple of different things, and plus some of my images will just come up off as well.
Let me let me ask you, Morris. I noticed that in your work, I won't I hesitate to classify it or qualify it as just portrait work, and I don't mean to say just as if that's difficult, but you do focus on people. I mean, the buildings and the cars and the everything else that's there is wonderful, but your real focus, it seems to me, is always people. And I'm just curious as to why. Was it just because you started with your brother, or what is it about the face? Your faces are amazing.
Well, thank you. Well, Mike, is something innate. I mean, it's something that I can't really explain. I can I guess to a degree. I mean, but why I'm so fascinated from the start. I it's something about it's something about a person's face that that still fascinates me. I mean, until this day, and that they are my favorite subject, as you well know. But it's because it's always interesting. I mean, it never ceases to be interesting. I mean, I teach at a couple of different juvenile facilities for K-12, and you start drawing one kid and it gets around, and and so so since I've been there, I've probably drawn probably 100 kids, and so and I learn something every time I do it. And there's really nothing like being able to draw or paint someone from life, because there's conversations that are to be had, and you learn about them, and they learn a little bit about you.
I'm wondering, do you do portraits by commission?
I do, I do when it comes about.
Okay,
Mhm.
wonderful. That's one of those things when someone sees an artist's work and go, "Oh, I love that work," and just knowing that it's possible that they could get a portrait done, whether it's themselves or another
Yes,
family member or
absolutely.
something like that.
Yes, absolutely. It's the the whole human condition is fascinating, and even though I love all different types of art, there's that's my comfort zone. That's what I really enjoy more than anything else. But it's but all drawings and paintings are their own challenge, and the one thing that I tell kids, and I tell them that it's important that it's not so much that you have to sit completely still, but your eyes can't shift all around, because if you don't capture a person's eyes, then you haven't captured them, and that's pretty much the end of it. No matter what you do, it won't look like them. So if you can get a person's eyes, then you pretty much captured them for the most part.
Do you find that you mentioned you're doing some teaching now, and you have in the past, and I'm wondering, do you learn from any of your students?
I do, because what I get the most out of is, let me try to put it in more into context. My mother was she was the warden, the the jailer, the whole 9 yards, and I mean, and she didn't play. But the one thing that she always gave me autonomy over was art. That's the one thing that I've been able to be the be the boss of, be in charge of. And so when I see kids, most of the time I find that kids, when they can kind of express themselves it usually turns out really pretty good, because what I miss sometimes, because I've turned into this detailed, gotta have everything exactly this way or that way. And I remember being a kid and not having to have those concerns. And when I see kids, they don't have those concerns. They're just doing what they feel, or what they see, or what's inside of them, and they're not worried about the outside. They're not worried about the critique. They're happy with it. And those are the kind of things that I pick up. And it kind of puts me, in that place of of just taking it easy sometimes, and just taking a deep breath, and things aren't that serious. And so that's just one of many things that I learned from them.
I'm curious. There are so many artists in the community. I mean, and I don't mean just visual artists, dancers and singers and musicians, and just so many. I'm wondering, who inspires you? Who do you see out there that's exciting?
James Pate,
Yeah.
who's a friend of mine. Among a few, being, of course. And there's just art that I see. Um, and if you're just I'm just talking about people here in Dayton,
Yeah.
just to mention a few. But there's a lady that's in my art group, because I'm a member of AVAC. Um, and so she's a member, and her sister is as well. Her name is Andrea Cummings, and I'm very much in admiration of her embroidery work. And she does these really cool uh, embroidery pieces, and I find that fascinating. And so, and then on a national level or international level, there's so many. I mean, there are just so many artists that I admire, from one, you know um, part of the globe to the next. I mean, there are just some fantastic art in the world. And sometimes I just take the time to go to Pinterest or something, and I just look at all this art, and it's inspiring. And it's some things are not for me, as far as what I would do as an artist, but I have so much admiration that someone else is doing it. And so, like I said, I'm not a person. I consider myself as a realist, but that doesn't mean that I can't have admiration for what other people do, from abstract to performance art. There's always something to capture my attention, and I just don't believe in. I'm just not that regimented. I may be in my own practice, but I'm not regimented when it comes to others.
So when you have a student that you're working with, and you have had a number over the years, what what's the one thing that you have to always tell them to help them move forward?
Well, the the challenge I have mostly with kids is confidence. And you can have you, there are some talented kids that I've come across. I mean, that are really talented. That if they really decided that art is what they wanted to pursue, they could be successful at it. But the confidence is not there lots of times. And I'm hoping that somewhere down the line, that they'll pick that up because I mean, they're not lacking talent. They're lacking the ability to believe in themselves and to believe that art can change their life like it changed mine. And um, I haven't always been in a place where people wanted to talk to me or people wanted to, buy my art or anything. I've been in some low places, in the
Yeah.
pursuit, and had many jobs and many situations. But if something's what I tell a kid, if something's in you and you know it's in you and you ignore it or you try to not think about it, it's coming back up. I mean, and so that's what happened, with me. It's like, and then people will remind you, because I still to this day, when I run into old classmates, the first thing they ask me, "Are you still drawing?" And so that kind of lets me know I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate this. I appreciate your time and being able to share with a lot of other people in the community. We don't always know who the artists are. We see the work, but we don't always know who's behind that. And so I really appreciate it. For everybody who's out there who's viewing this. We want to encourage you to support Culture Works. The arts and artists like this are indispensable assets in our community, and we're a different community without you.
Well,
Um,
well, I appreciate that,
it's
Mike.
it's and it, I mean, can you imagine if you think about this, Morris, right now? Seriously, would we be the same community without Bing Davis?
No,
No, we really wouldn't.
absolutely not.
And I think sometimes what other artists need to know and the rest of us need to remember is that we wouldn't be this same community without you. And
Thank
and
you.
art and everybody needs to know that it's you are the reason, as well as Bing and every other artist, the reason to support Culture Works. Um, so thank
Well,
you for
thank
what
you.
you're doing.
Thank you,
Um,
Mike.
Anybody who wants to know more about Culture Works, go to the website, cultureworks.org. If you want to know about Morris, Google him.
Yeah.
Uh, that's going to be the best way, and hopefully we'll see an exhibit from your works. And thank you so much for today. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
All righty. Take care of yourself.
You
And
too.
next time we can do this in person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, great. Thanks.
Thank you.